and welcome to a special episode of FS Brew. In today's episode, it's a panel discussion with Power Pack panelists joining us, and we've partnered with Lumi. Lumi is an edtech startup that runs design thinking-led cohort-based quests for companies. So together with Lumi, we wanted to explore how organizations, specifically within financial services sector, can meaningfully innovate for Gen Zs and Millennials. So we have with us in alphabetical order, Prashant Raizada. He is the founder of Lumi. Preeti Mundra, CEO of Tree Insurance. Suvo Sarkar, founder of 3D Advisory. Vikram Krishna, founder of Sacred Groups. Thank you all for joining us today.
Welcome, everybody. So maybe before we kick it off, I think it's been lovely to have a quick intro from all of you. Let's start with Preeti.
Hey everyone, I'm Preeti. I'm the CEO of Tree Digital Insurance. It's Saudi Arabia's first fully digital insurance agency powered by Taunia. I'm based in Saudi Arabia in Riyadh, and I've spent a big part of my career in the Middle East. Started in banking in Emirates and BD, and that's my connection back to Vikram and Suvo. And then now I'm here in Riyadh.
Perfect.
Prashant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you for joining us. I'm Prashant Raizada, founder and CEO of Lumi. Vidya mentioned about us briefly. I have been an edtech entrepreneur for the last 15 years. And before that, spent my first decade in business building a large business process outsourcing company in collaboration with Infosys, where I was a founding team member, and spent a few years at McKinsey. At Lumi, what I'm doing is really develop an organization which is bringing governments, companies, academia, and leaders together to try and pave the way for the next generation to thrive.
Perfect. Very good. I'm just going to go counterclockwise on my screen. So I see Suvo next. Suvo, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Suvo Sarkar. I've been a banker for over 36 years across different markets globally. My last role was the global head of retail banking and wealth management for Emirates MBD, based here in Dubai, but covering multiple markets. I now run an advisory firm called 3D Advisory, and I have a bunch of multinational clients who I advise. So I've actually moved now from execution to advising people to do things. Very happy to be on this panel and share some of my experiences.
Excellent. And Vikram.
Hi, my name is Vikram Krishna. Delighted to be here today. I'm a financial services professional by training, but now I'm a climate action influencer by choice. I run Sacred Groves. We're a conservation organization, and we protect forests all over the world from getting destroyed. We've so far protected 3 forests, 2 in the UK and 1 in Canada. The one behind me here is in Canada, with the help of individuals and companies from 50 plus countries. Our aspiration really is how to protect 1 million acres of forests by 2030 from getting destroyed all over the world. And not an easy task, but all geared up to make it happen.
Fantastic. So I think our listeners and viewers can see that we have a power-packed and pertinent audience here. I think I'll probably kickstart the first set of questions. So really, we're talking about AI and sustainability throughout. And arguably, it's a kind of unrelated topic, but they're becoming hugely important in today's, both for our customers and for our employees. So what we want to expect and kind of dive down is how can a company build a brand aligned with these sort of powerful forces that are shaping our lives? How can financial sector leverage AI, develop sort of culture of innovation, entrepreneurship, and maybe explore some novel and meaningful ways to engage the youth to win market share and mind space, right? Now, Gen Zs and Millennials, right? Understanding their needs, is that important at all? Is a provocative question, right? That's a question I don't even need to ask. But let's start with Preeti. How are you finding and filling the gap between the customer needs and your product offering? You're a CEO of an insurtech in Saudi, fairly young audience in Saudi. And what have you seen in KSA that is similar or different from what are you seeing in UAE, what you've seen in UAE before?
So let me start with what I see differently here. KSA, I believe, is an inherently very different market compared to UAE. The demographics are very different. The size of the country, the composition of the population is very different. Predominantly Saudi nationals, a large local population, which is young. digitally very savvy, pretty world aware, I would say. And they are right now part of a massive change. The narrative of the country has changed, a huge growth momentum. And you can see that. You can see that in what they demand, the pace at which they demand digitization, innovation. It's there because it's being driven by the narrative of the country itself. So I see significant differences, both from the demographic point of view, but also where the youth of this country is in their journey. Right. And that leads to some differences in what they expect their brands to deliver. Right. I see the youth here, they're becoming more and more vocal about issues on sustainability, etc., which we will touch upon shortly. But then you also see a lot of growing trends, for example, around domestic travel. It's a large country, and domestic travel is a big phenomena, not just global international travel. That opens up different requirements from a product point of view, not just focusing on global travel, but making local travel easier and convenient, whether it's by railroad or airways. Now, you also see that even simpler things like pet adoption, which wasn't a big phenomena in the country up until the recent past. The youth are becoming more and more attuned to owning pets and taking care of pets. And this was something that we as insurance were not catering to in the past. So how do we plug that gap for them? So these are just some examples. When it comes to mobility, where we currently have our first product, the demand for flexibility is rapidly increasing. They want affordability. You give us something that's going to match our pockets, that's flexible. I can change my mind at any point during the policy period. And this makes traditional insurance a little bit redundant for the youth, and they are seeking ways of doing things in the moment, digitally, and hassle-free. They're not willing to travel miles to come settle a claim or follow up on a claim, right? So when everything else, including all government services, are available at the tip of a finger, insurance cannot be excused for having very cumbersome paper-led processes or complex products. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Vikram, coming to you as the founder of Sacred Grows, you're in a really unique position to see a number of these ESG factors coming to life in some form or shape. It's becoming an important factor within the financial sector itself. Now, traditionally, financial services, they've focused on short-term gains, short-term returns, ROI, and whatnot. Now, how has the industry, thanks to all the conversations that's been happening recently, encouraging that whole shift from a long-term perspective, prioritizing sustainable practices? How are they bringing that to the customers as well in their journeys?
Interesting.
Loaded question, yes.
Yeah, such a loaded question. So let me answer in a very simple way. I was 16th of April, Dubai experienced an unprecedented weather event. I was supposed to go to Abu Dhabi to speak in the World Energy Summit about climate. And I had to excuse myself because of climate change reasons. And today in the morning, I realized that I have to be on this podcast, and I had to wake up at 3 in the morning because there was a waterfall in my bedroom because of the rains that Dubai and this region is experiencing. So ESG, very wide topic, but I think the train has left the station for many reasons. First is for environmental reasons, which is the area I represent, and I'm extremely passionate and angry about as well. And the reason is that we are at a 1.5 degree world, which is why you're seeing these extreme climate events occurring. And that's something to put in context. The Paris Agreement that a lot of us talk about in 2015, the role of the Paris Agreement was to limit the world at 1.5 degrees by 2030. And the tragedy of the commons is that we are in 2024 and we are seeing a 1.5 degree world already. Yeah. One is environmental reasons, and these are getting quite concerning. Second is that we're seeing a flow of capital. I can argue that the flow of capital is not enough, but the latest study reveals that about 40 trillion of capital is flowing into ESG. How much of that is creating tangible actions? One just needs to look out of the window and see the weather and see what the impact of that capital is. Of course, capital has to do a much better job, and I'm sure Shu will have a comment on that. Regulations are evolving as well. I'm a part of many sort of activist groups, and what we're trying to do is to make environment not a civil issue, but a criminal issue. So today in different parts of the world, if you destroy a 500-year-old forest, then it's a civil issue. If you destroy a 500-year-old monument, then it's a criminal issue, right? So we're trying to see how we can influence regulation to make climate and our nature a lot more integral. And of course, as Preeti alluded to, and of course what Prashant is doing as well, the consumer behavior is shifting as well. So each of us who represent large organizations, when we come home and talk to our children, we face some rather angry young people who are saying that, why do we have to clean up what you did not do? And so it's a whole range of these factors. There's a lot more that needs to be done. Of course, organizations claim that they've done a fantastic job. Every company today has a glorious ESG report, which claims what a brilliant effort that the organization is making. But I think the mirror is the answer to that question.
You raised a very few important points there, and I think I can vouch to the anger that I face from my 14-year-old. Suvo, you were a senior banker in a very large bank here. I want to know a few points from a banking industry point of view. So banks, how can they become a preferred sort of financial advisor or a destination for Gen Zs and millennials? And you may feel free to differentiate between these two generations that we tend to clump together wrongly or rightly. And if there are any examples of what's being done to retain and attract these customers, right from user experience to products like BNPL, robo-investing, so on and so forth.
So let me first start by saying that I have two daughters. One is millennial and one is Gen Z. And they can't be more different. They are two different generations.
Yes.
And a huge gap between the two of them in terms of thinking. So that's the first comment. But going back to the earlier point that I think Vidya raised about how important are millennials, let me make a comment which is statistical in nature. 25% of the global population today are millennials, 25%. And they form the majority of the workforce today, globally. So it's a segment that no provider, banks or otherwise, can ignore, right? And their thinking is quite different from thinking that we've had growing up as Gen X, or even our parents, the baby boomers, very different thinking. So I think banks, insurance companies, and any provider of any services can ill afford to ignore the requirements of the segment. I was doing research on a recent article I published just this morning. In the US alone, millennials would earn $8 trillion this year. $8 trillion is the combined income of millennials in the US alone. If you add the rest of the world, the number, of course, multiplies. The point I'm making is you have to think of what millennials and going forward, what Gen Zers would want in terms of product, services, company agendas, both with the employee, with the community, environment, etc., before we make decisions on what we want to do next. I think there are 3 or 4 things from a bank's and insurance company perspective, and I know if Preeti and Prashant and Vikram and you disagree. And the first one is I think we will think of every single product or every single experience of a customer afresh, outside in, and think through why do we do what we do? Why do we require 10 signatures that I can do with 1 or 2, right? I think a lot of companies are doing that. And of course, the newer banks or the fintechs are the best at this in terms of rethinking customer journeys. Banks have been slow to it. But like I keep saying to my banking colleagues, the best thing that happened to banking in the last 20 years is fintechs. I think it was a wake-up call. And I think banks have woken up, and all the change we see in banking becoming much cooler, quote unquote, is thanks to the pressure from fintechs. The banks, otherwise, we wouldn't have been as bankers getting up and running as fast as they're doing today, had it not been for the pressure from the fintechs. So that's the first thing, customer journeys. The second, I think, is personalization. I think millennials, Gen Zs will not accept a one-size-fits-all approach. We have to hyper-personalize. And you think of Netflix in terms of what the next best offer is. Banks, in some ways, have become like Netflix, in very sharp in what we recommend to our customers, especially in these cohorts. The third, I would say, is move from pure banking to beyond banking. And I think banks will realize that nobody wakes up in the morning and say, I want to bank today, right? I want to buy a car today. I want to buy a house today. I want to buy a fashion item today. But I want to send money to my mother today, but I don't want to bank today. So banking is a means to an end. And I think for banks far too long have thought of themselves as the end to customer needs. That's not the case at all, right? We have to move to embedded finance, where we are embedding banking into the car purchase, we are embedding banking into house purchase, or in the case of BNPL, any purchase, right? We have to move from banking to beyond banking. An example of that is what we did at Emirates LBD with Vikram and Preeti, where we managed part of it, is launched a digital lifestyle bank, Live, which went beyond banking to include things that millennials like, which is sports, which is music, which is food and drink, events. And that is part of the app that the customers use. And that has been a big success, 500,000 customers today, and profitable. So I think you have to move from banking to beyond banking. And the final point, I think the point that Vikram alluded to is we have to think of other factors that affect customer choices, right? Gender diversity, community thinking, climate action. All of these are important millennials. And they will make choices actively towards institutions that they see are aware and are taking action. I think, to refer to Vikram's point, a lot of it at the moment for bank boardrooms is pure talk. We're just trying to fulfill a set of regulations, ticking a few boxes, which allow us to show that we've done some stuff, right? I consumed, I don't know, maybe 25 liters of water per month per employee last year. This year I'm 20 liters, so I've done great, 25% increase, improvement. That's not enough, right? We have to go far beyond that to be able to make real difference to the community we live in. So I think a lot of it has to move from talk to action, and it's from pure reporting to really feeling the change you are making in the environment we are in. So those are my initial comments in terms of where we are with both with millennials and sustainability.
Perfect. I like that beyond banking tag. Yeah, with you.
Coming to you, you're walking the talk. You're working very closely with the young generation as early as 10-year-old. You run these quests, which allows companies to engage with this segment on topics that are very close to them. You design these quests, and ultimately it comes out with an output that the companies can work towards. What is the nature of these quests, and how are the Gen Z audiences responding to these quests? It'd be great if you can tell us a few examples, especially from the financial services sector would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Vidya. The whole idea of Lumi actually came out from my son when he was 11. Now, he didn't think of a business or an idea. He just did what he did. And because I'd spent so much time in this sector, I and some people around me picked up on this idea of why don't we create a platform that allows these young people, regardless of the age to some extent, to solve the biggest problems that the world is facing. So they get a voice, they get agency. To pick up on Vikram's point, they're angry, or some of them are activists. They see Greta Thunberg and they think, we can't do that. So from anger and activism to action. But that is not enough. Many of us here are, if not all of us, are parents. As parents, we don't want our children to be angry or activists. We want them to be successful. So therefore, the second thing that this platform must do is prepare them for the future by building skills. So we are combining the two, right? And what we are doing here is something I've realized over my 25-year career, this transition that I've seen in companies, that I think doing well and doing good are now intertwined. I think if you just try and do well, and Preeti, you made this point about insurance, right? You can do well as an insurance company, but if you don't do good, you cannot connect with your customers. So what we are doing is really trying to make things a little easy. Companies can do whatever they do, but they collaborate with us. Governments can do whatever they do, but if the work give us a chance, and academia can do whatever it does in universities and schools, but it gives our platform a chance, we can change the trajectory of this young generation from what it is today. It's traditional education, inability to contribute to the global issues, and people who come out and then all of us complain they're not ready for the world of work, to people who are purpose-led, highly skilled, and collaborative. It's such a simple thing, yet, let me be honest, I haven't done anything harder in my life.
Yeah.
So these quests are basically collaborative programs, which are very human-led, but equally AI-led now, where these people come together, solve problems, come out with a tangible tech-enabled innovation. We don't like presentations. We like an innovation. And then come out with a personalized digital skills passport that a corporate values or a university values. So everything has to be very tangible. Like Vikram is saying, it has to be very tangible. Just look out of your window. You can see the impact of all the $40 trillion missing. It's not tangible enough. So how do financial services sector, how does it actually play a role in it? I think a very big role, because if you go to any country in the world, this is the sector that's a leading sector, if not the leader. I'm sitting doing this from London right now. This city is known, this country is known for financial services. Now, what have we done with financial services? I'm able to only convince 1 out of 10 CEOs to take us seriously. So we are actually failing at this point with this sector. But we have managed to work with leading banks. And what we are saying is, we'll be your talent partner, we'll be your impact partner, and we'll be your innovation partner. You pick what you want us to partner with. We just want you to come, give us a chance to engage with these young people, run these quests, enjoy the innovations. And if you want, you can put money behind those innovations, because we've got more than 100 of them now. But try and develop these people also into your future employees. So that's why we started with 10, as you said, Vidya, but now we are actually hovering at 25 years of age, because the governments and the companies are saying, I don't know what to do with the 10-year-old. I love this person, but can you please reskill or upskill our graduates or university students who we can employ? So we are making it easy for some of the executives here, like Preeti, Suvo, Vikram, when you are in your roles, or when you were in your roles, to do well and do good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're finally given a mechanism by which you can harness that angst into tangible action. So that's interesting.
I think that's a beautifully put one, the whole angst coming together into a platform, because you anyway have these younger generation who are always on iPads, who are digitally native, digitally savvy, have got that skills and have that angst against these causes. And then you've got the pain points from the corporate side of things, where they want to make the difference, at least from a data point of view. At least that's what we're hearing, and also create systems where they can engage with communities, whether it's customers or employees. And I think that way the platform plugs in quite well. I think that's pretty good. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Ranjit, here?
No, that's good. I'll probably go on into the next one. I think all of you alluded to that talent aspect a little bit, and innovation as well. It's important to be innovative, and that's become a catchphrase. And then you put in the changes that have happened in terms of Gen AI and the hype and the reality of Gen AI. Suddenly you have a tool by which you can do something different in your company and upskill your young employees, develop them, have a mechanism for actually creating a competitive edge in your company. With that as the background, Preeti, you built an insurtech from the ground up in KSA with the backing of Tavunya. Can you probably give us a case study of how you are creating a culture of innovation in your company? And you can say, no, it doesn't, if AI doesn't play a part, but if AI does, we'd love to know.
You cannot be an insurtech in today's day and age and not get into the topic of Gen AI or just the traditional AI. It's interesting how AI itself has become traditional and now Gen AI is the thing. So innovation with or without AI is a must-have. It's a part of our DNA. It's one of the primary reasons why Tree was even set up by Tavunya to be this engine of innovation, a test bed for new technologies, and bring to market ideas that are new, interesting, that are relevant to today's generation, and can be scaled up efficiently. I think the role of AI becomes extremely important when we talk about scaling up the innovation and making it accessible, affordable, and sustainable over time. Where it starts, however, is not from the technology, it's the people. So hiring the right mindsets. I built my team from being just 4 members when I joined, when we came together. Today, we are almost 70 people. And I can say that I pretty much hired each one of them, cherry-picked. And what we look for is the mindset. Do you have the courage? Innovation takes courage and resilience. When we are on this path, failure has to come through. It's inevitable, right? How resilient are we to that? How quickly can we switch gears, right? And how courageous are we to work with uncertainties? Because not everything is defined as in a binary system. So mindset is most important. I think the second thing that's helping us drive a culture of innovation internally is the nature of our conversations. What do we talk about most of the times? Is it our daily sales, revenues, top line, bottom line? Or a bulk of the conversation starting from the leadership is around what are we building? What are we creating? What are we doing differently? So being very conscious about what we talk about most, what do we measure the most, and what do we reward and recognize the most is going to determine what the team is going to be focused on. If everyday conversations are about sales and revenue, yes, that's important. But when you're thinking about building something that's future ready, you have to look beyond today's numbers. So I'm very conscious about what we talk about to the team on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Setting the tone of the culture, right? So last year, for example, we got the whole team together and we went into a 2 days workshop to craft our own values. And I had shared this with Vikram when we met one-on-one. And I said, these are values that don't just sound like phrases out of a consultant's book.
Right.
This is something that the key team came together with. And we as a team, we are rooting for growth stories. It connects with our brand, with who we are. But then our values, and then if I may elaborate on them, we have 4 values, very simple and very tree. Dig deep, get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves and be ready to do what needs to be done. Branch out. Think differently, just branch out. And then if you're doing all these 3 things, standing tall and celebrating our joint success is a part of what we are all looking to and working towards. So these are values we came out with. Now, it was easier to come up with this. Bringing this to life on a day-to-day basis is, as a leader, my biggest area of focus, not settling down for mediocrity. How do we then push for innovation internally is, again, giving the young people we have in our team with a lot of passion, a lot of ideas, giving them the opportunity to build this themselves. It's, we can always take an excuse and say, let's outsource. Let's get a company that already has this technology and let's license it from somewhere else. But the sense of pride and joy that the team has in creating something meaningful themselves, it's unparalleled, right? So recently we, for example, commissioned a whole project on using Gen AI for making our life easier on many fronts, whether it's in claims processing or even managing accounting, financing, and payables, going beyond into using Gen AI for policy renewals, cross-sell, upsell, and making it a part of embedded insurance journeys, right? Now, this is something that we've met many insurtechs around the world. Many of them have pitched this to us. But then the team came up and said, Preeti, we want to do this. Do you believe in us and will you give us the mandate for this project? If we don't get it, you can anyways go out and outsource or license it from elsewhere. But we are very keen to do this ourselves. And I had every reason to trust in them and say, yes, go ahead. I'll be the happiest to see my own team creating this and using all of the technology that's available to you. So building that culture of internal entrepreneurship and letting them experiment, encouraging them, rewarding them for having that courage. I think so. All in all, yes, Gen AI is part of the innovation. It's not the only tool available for innovation.
Absolutely.
I think it's the culture, it's the people and the mindset that will decide how well we actually use Gen AI and all the other available technologies.
Yeah, no, I love the values that you mentioned, and obviously it is the culture that really is important in any transformation. So yeah, spot on.
Awesome. And it's exciting because as a young digital brand, you're able to do all of that. Coming to you, Suvo, are you seeing that in maybe mature organizations or financial institution, and you work with a lot of them from your consulting point of view? Are they adapting this culture of innovation or AI specifically from a board perspective or also from an organization goal perspective?
Yeah, very much. I think to me, this is the Kodak moment for AI in banking in terms of the aha moment, in understanding that AI can really transform banking inside out.
Nice.
And to be fair, predictive AI has been there in banking for, I would say, the last decade or so.
Yeah.
Banks have been using some form of AI in terms of credit decisioning, certain stuff in the back end. But what is new in the last 1 year specifically is generative AI, Gen AI, right? So I think it's a bit of a journey from predictive AI to Gen AI. I think it will fundamentally alter the way banking is done. And I would say from the front end to the back end. In the front end, I think we are seeing a lot of movement towards on the lending side, faster and more accurate decision making on credit, or I'm sure in underwriting and insurance as well. You can use AI to actually assess prospective customer far faster than you could do earlier. From a customer perspective, it's a much faster turnaround time. From a bank perspective, you're choosing the right customers and being able to lend them more and insure them more right to the optimum level, right? It actually generates additional revenue pools. The second is on wealth management, where customers can now choose the right products based on a AI guided advisory, which is happening for a number of wealth firms. We're seeing that. And third, on the customer service side, I think there's a huge possibility of being able to be giving customers much more data much faster, and for the call center agents to actually move to what is being called now conversational AI, which essentially using the best in class agents to craft the best in class answers for customer queries. And that's in a system which actually allows the agent to ask the right question prompted by AI. Depending on what the customer is commenting, the answer to the customer's question is prompted by the AI software at the back end. And that makes it basically the best agent is not replicated across 1,000 agents or 10,000 agents. So every agent is not the best agent, which will transform the way customers experience banking. That's the front end, yeah, those three things. On the back end, I think there's a lot of work in saving costs for compliance, saving costs for data analysis, a lot of work that AI can do the heavy lifting at the back end, and then allow people to do more productive stuff and more innovative stuff. There's one report by McKinsey. I am advisor to McKinsey, so people like McKinsey here. The total amount of additional revenues generated by AI in the banking sector by 2030 is $1 trillion US. That is $1 trillion US of additional impact on the bottom line of banks in the next 6 years. That's a huge number. Yeah. So there is every reason for every bank and every insurer and every institution to adopt AI quicker rather than slower. I think a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but I think a number of banks are putting a number of use cases to test, including banks in the UAE and Saudi, and I'm involved in many of those banks. Some serious work going on. I think you'll see a huge improvement both in bank profitability as well as customer experience with the institutions.
Yeah, I think I like that whole aspect of hyper-personalized. Every agent that interacts with the customer is going to be a high-class agent simply because that agent has access to all the stores of data that the organization has. Fabulous. Vikram, would you like to add from your conversations board level with the companies that you're talking to? You might go there to pitch Sacred Groves, but they are talking to you about AI as well, right?
Yeah, so my conversations in the past couple of months have become more and more interesting. We're supported by Microsoft. We're a part of their Entrepreneurship for Global Impact. There are just 37 companies globally that are a part of this. We're also part of PwC's Future 50. We also lent our voice on certain topics at COP28 as well. So the way I'm trying to build my argument, of course, it's multidimensional, some of which is covered, is on talent. And because I'm inspired by what Preeti just mentioned about values and culture, there's a new word, there's a new phrase that has been introduced into our lives over the last few years. It's called climate quitters. And maybe I'm one of them as well. And what is happening is that talented individuals who are a part of large organizations are clearly demanding a lot more action from their organization. They're expecting, fast methods, maybe some of them powered by AI, which enable a far more transparent outcome, which they're able to experience for themselves. And the reality is that from an information and an awareness and also understanding perspective, most individuals who are part of these large organizations aren't completely able to understand what the organization wants to do. And that's then leading to a certain number of angst, and that then, of course, impacts productivity and innovation. And also, should one continue in the organization and serve it to their best abilities? So I think just to put a wrapper around what Suvo and Preeti mentioned, and the fact that millennials are now representing an 8 trillion economy, and there's also a 40 trillion wealth shift, which is expected over the next 10 years. And of course, who's going to get it? It's the younger audience as well, right? Yeah. I think it's super critical that climate becomes center. It's also super critical that AI and generative AI plays a role, because there are a lot of very fundamental and structural inefficiencies in human systems. And you take anything, right? Since I'm in a financial services industry topic, right? At 1.5 degrees, ask the general insurance industry of the Middle East what's going to happen to their profits this year.
We only need to talk to the insurers in UAE right now, and
Yeah,
unimaginable.
yeah.
And if I can provoke it first, at a 2-degree world, the insurance company would be a gambling industry.
Yeah,
Sure.
There's no way one is going to be able to predict with any degree of certainty what will be the probability of the entire accrual science ecosystem and how will that translate to claims. Yeah. And that's the cost of servicing that as well. So financial service industry, huge inefficiencies because of climate change. Second, I was in the food sector industry a couple of days back. So a third of the food that is produced by humanity gets wasted by the time it comes to our table. Yeah. I was with the energy industry 2 weeks back. 67% of the energy that we produce as humanity gets wasted by the time it comes to your homes and your offices. So there are some very big questions. Yeah. And I would like to focus on the questions and more and lesser so on the methodology, and maybe generative AI as a part of that methodology. What I'm saying is that there are a lot of these bigger questions that are asked in forums like these and in boardrooms too, rather than quarter-on-quarter results.
Yeah.
And perhaps talent management, culture of innovation, and the realities of the planet that we're living in guide some of those answers.
Vikram, just to add to what you said, I just heard an interview the other day about this whole Bangalore water crisis. And I didn't realize that this environmental scientist was talking about the fact that a lot of water in Bangalore homes is supplied from the Kaveri River, which is 100 kilometers away from the city. And by the time the water gets pumped and supplied to the homes, 50% of the water is wasted. 50%. Now, that's a huge number, right? So we have to, as a society, find better ways of transmitting power, transmitting water, either that or consume less. What are the two, right? There's no other solution because there are no new sources of water.
Absolutely. If the question is that AI is the answer, then my question is, what's the question you're trying to solve?
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, those questions aren't getting answered at the moment at the pace at which they need to.
Yeah. I think you're right, Vikram. I think it's the quality of questions that leads to high quality answers and discussion and discourse, right? Yeah.
And then technology becomes a means to augment the gap. Yeah, definitely.
Correct. Because when you look at market valuation in the last 3 years, who's made disproportionate valuation? It's the AI industry. It's the chip makers, right? That's the tool. The money should go towards solving the larger questions, not the answer. It's like money is flowing into an answer that's trying to solve some questions.
Yeah.
The other way around.
Yeah. So a fundamental shift needs to be done for sure, looks like. Prashant, if we have to come to you on this, so how are you helping organization achieve that fundamental shift, achieve this objective of truly developing that culture of innovation and within the organizations you work with?
So again, on the one hand, we are engaging with organizations like what Preeti is talking about. Right? When you are at a certain stage of your maturity, or if you're a large organization, how do you develop that mindset shift or affect that mindset shift? That's very difficult. So what we have found is, again, driven by as I said before, by some of these organizations, they're saying, we want to help you work with the 10-year-olds, but can you work with our current crop of young talent or any employee for that matter? So we are saying, great, the methodology that we adopt, which has been designed by my co-founder, who's a professor at Stanford and a global name in design thinking, Chris Shen, that applies everywhere. So we are working with these organizations and saying, instead of talking about general problems, let's pick up the biggest problems in the world, including climate, which they care about, or let's pick up your business problems and apply the quest to that to drive certain outcomes. But I think that's still, I would call, a very tactical thing from our perspective. We are solving the here and now for businesses, which is something that we need to do to survive. But there is a much bigger problem we are trying to solve. And sometimes I have to actually remind myself that in trying to solve a very big problem, make sure you survive. But the big problem that we are trying to solve with there is, like Suvo, you mentioned, right? The impact of AI will be 1 trillion. But the real problem that we are grappling with, is it a human being or is it AI? That we don't understand right now. The answer a lot of people are saying is a human being who's able to work with AI. Now, how do you do that mindset shift in the current employee base? What you can do is skill up the coming generation of employees who understand AI. Now, what are we doing there? Globally, education systems are prohibiting the use of AI. That is not going to help. Now, let's just go back a decade and look, as parents, think about what happened when social media came around. We were doing whatever we were doing. Some of our children picked up social media and lived a parallel life. They still do. We don't understand. Now comes AI. They are doing whatever they are doing, and we don't understand. So instead of that, why don't we take a proactive approach, get the young generation familiar with AI, skilled in AI, so that they can act, and at the same time, to Vikram's point, answer the larger questions. AI is a tool. But what is the larger question? How do I solve for climate? How do I solve for inequality? How do I solve for cybersecurity? And those kinds of things. So you need to do that at the same time. We've always had the steam engine or the internet and now AI. But we haven't been able to solve these problems without human beings. Doing well, doing good, you have to do it with AI. But you can't do it if you haven't invested in people and you haven't skilled up those people. So that is really what we're trying to do. But we want to do this at a very large scale. So that's why without getting the right kinds of sectors involved, without getting business leaders like you involved, we can't get anywhere. This Lumi is not an initiative that I can build like a classic ed tech company, raise lots of money and try and show a hockey stick.
Yeah.
It's just impossible to do it. It requires people to come together to understand the problem, understand the big questions, and say, I think it's extremely important for us to solve this problem together. And through that, I can see a clear path, which is some leaders do, others don't.
Yeah.
Find a path to my own profitability and my own growth.
Yeah.
Prashant, on your point, just one thing I want to add is an interesting paradigm that IBM, who were the first ones to create AI with Watson, uses is this paradigm of we are today moving from plus AI. What we're doing, we just add AI to it. So conversational AI is call center plus AI, credit decisioning plus AI, etc. From plus AI, in the future, going to AI plus. So essentially today we're just adding AI to what we do and trying to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
They think 10 years later, it'll be AI, the plus human beings when they're required, right? That's an interesting concept to keep in mind, right? This is the transition, this is the journey, this is the direction of travel, AI plus to plus AI. Now, we cannot fully imagine what will happen in the AI plus stage, correct? And we know what we're doing today with plus AI, right? All of us have some idea what we'll do with plus AI. We can get better speeches. All my farewell speeches, when I was leaving my ex-employment MBD, I had probably 8 or 10 farewell speeches. I used ChatGPT shamelessly because I can't think of every context. And the speeches are wonderful. None of the people realized that I was using ChatGPT.
Right.
But thanks to ChatGPT, it becomes much easier, stuff like that, right? So it's still plus AI. But AI plus is something you can't imagine what that will be, right? Do we need people at all in doing insurance underwriting, for example? Why do you need people? The actual science can be coded into AI, will do a much better job than people will do. Watson in the medical sciences for IBM did far better cancer detection than oncologists did, right? Than human doctors did. So the age of AI plus, I don't know, it's 3 years away or 10 years away or 20 years away. But when that happens, I think it'll be a very different world.
Yeah.
I just thought I'll make that point.
So you make this, sorry, Prashant, if I may just add to what Suvo was saying, this whole topic of plus AI or AI plus, I'm actually living this right now because when we decided to automate insurance claims payout, the technology team is fully gung-ho about it. They want to go all in and do it. But then the insurance operations team and finance are very jittery and skeptical about this, not knowing what we are opening ourselves up to, right? We decided to go with the plus AI initially, saying let AI do the job. Let's see what's the accuracy of what the model is predicting. We pay, we don't pay, and let human eyes do this, review it, make a decision, and then the payout can just be a standard process. But the ambition is clear. The plus AI is just a temporary phase till we can build a certain level of confidence and say, okay, now 80% should go AI plus, and the AI would be 80%. Remaining 20%, where the AI itself is probably doubtful, should be where talented, qualified individuals are actually looking at it and then feeding it back to the AI. So the shift from plus AI to AI plus is going to be very interesting. I'm personally very curious to see how this pans out for us. Underwriting is an area where we are already using this. There are very advanced, sophisticated models available, made the lives of underwriters so much more different from what it used to be on traditional Excel models in the past. But seeing the impact of that in a lot of other operational areas is something I'm personally very interested in watching the space.
Yeah. So since you're all into mathematics, I'd love to add a multiplication to this plus AI context. With
right.
Plus AI into climate action.
Into what? Into what?
Into CA, climate action. If you really want to see a better world for yourself and for your children and for the communities around us, by all means, use the latest methods available to make things better. But when you are focused and razor sharp in what outcomes you wish to achieve, then maybe a CA is a gentle nudge in that direction.
I think, Vikram, that just building on both of your points, and actually also, Suvo, what you said, plus AI and AI plus. See, the thing is, the one thing that everybody understands human beings are really great at is creativity. So this transition from plus AI to AI plus, what will make this better is if we can actually give this tool and, you get people to use their creativity to think about, like you are doing with your cross-functional team. It's a beginning. This has to be far more expansive. But Vikram, to your point, the thing is that we need to get the young people to use this tool to solve bigger problems. Because frankly, humanity is moving towards, we have to solve much larger problems than underwriting. It's our own survival. And I think this is where AI and ESG converge, or climate action converge. Because what we are not yet covered, and I'm sure some of you will have a perspective on this, is what is the climate cost of AI? We can't also use this tool willy-nilly. It's hugely environmental.
Absolutely. I knew a combination of Vikram and Prashant would bring this out. Recent podcast of Sam Altman with Lex Fridman, who is a professor at MIT. So energy is going to be the biggest constraint for harnessing AI, right? And the huge amounts of energy that these data centers and these chips consume. People are looking at fusion. People are looking at all kinds of unconventional ways of generating energy. That is going to be the biggest constraint. So it's awesome. It's worth a listen.
So I'll give you an example. This came from a young person. We were talking in a quest about AI and climate, and everybody was like, oh, I love using ChatGPT. I want to use Perplexity, this, that, etc. And then somebody mentioned that, do you know the cost of training a new AI model at Microsoft, at Google, was used the amount of water that all of London used in the entire year.
Wow.
That is the amount of water it is consuming. Just one model. Like, where is that?
I read a interesting one the other day that if AI was a country, it'll be in the top 10.
Yeah. But I want to just react to Vikram's point. Vikram, you talk about climate action and the need for it. I'm totally aligned to it. My only reaction to you is reality check. Most CEOs, what is the average? 8 years as CEO, Wall Street or Fortune 500? Maybe less, 6 to 8 years. I forget the number. But climate action takes 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So all of these companies, whether it is the big banks, big oil companies, are setting up a 2049 target, 2060 target, 2070 target. The politicians who are setting these targets, the CEOs who are setting this target will not be there. They know that I won't be there. I can set what I want. If you ask me to set a target for 2050, but by then I'm retired and gone for a long time and made my bonuses, do I care? Honestly, human beings don't care what happens beyond their lifetime, right?
No.
A little bit. We care about our children and we want to keep some inheritance for them. I agree, but that's our children. We're selfish with them. But we are far less selfish with the world at large. So I doubt these 2049, 2069 targets because who's going to see? Will you and I be there to see it? No. So this is a big problem with climate action. The timelines are very stretched.
So it's a just super provocation on this, right? So
it is. So yeah, go ahead.
when I come across CEOs talking about 2040 targets and 2050 targets and so on, I know I'm like a parrot, so I just repeat facts in these situations. So I remind them again, we are at 1.5 degree world. By 2030, we're looking at 2 degree world. Yeah. So depending on which industry that they represent, I contextualize what a 2 degree world means to their industry. Yeah. 2030 is not too far away, it's 6 years from now.
Yeah.
So it might happen if the CEO has an 8-year term, it might happen within his term or her term. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Preeti.
The time is not on our side anymore. It's not a 2040, 2050 discussion. But yeah, the point is spot on. It's a long cycle, front-loaded costs and benefits that go a very long time. Even accounting models can't really assess how that long tail of benefits can get accrued today. Yeah. So yes, there is a front-loaded cost. There is a long tail of benefits. But you got to do it.
Yeah.
Some companies are doing it. I was with the Chief Sustainability Officer of Virgin Media, and they have a youth advisory council. Now, what they're saying is we realize that on our own, we are not making the right decisions. So all of our big business decisions, particularly on e-waste or new initiatives, have to go through the Youth Advisory Council. So the point is that we need this, Suvo, to your point, we need this intergenerational dialogue where young people keep the leaders honest, but in a constructive way, not in an activist way where I come under pressure every time I go into that council as to why am I not doing this or doing that. I don't want to do that. But if it's a constructive dialogue, again, that is really what we are trying to do. But we can't be the only one. You in your individual businesses have to do it. We can play a very small role. We need that dialogue.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the whole intergenerational is, we have to take Preeti's example of tree. Somebody puts the seed, somebody plants it, somebody grows, somebody puts the water. So I guess it has to be a continuity in the way it's structured itself. So if it is AI plus into CA, the work is cut out for the organization quite some. And so that sort of segues into our last cluster and segment in terms of, if we truly have to build an organization, a brand that is aligned to all these values that the Gen Zs and the Millennials value, and we have established that they are quite passionate about climate change and sustainability. How do we structure this brand that truly exudes a greater purpose? And it's not limited to, like Suvo mentioned, just fancy reports and then the brand look and feel, but truly intrinsically from the DNA of the brand itself. So Preeti, I'll start off with you first on this. As a digital insurance brand, as a Tree CEO, how are you seeing that you're building a brand that resonates with the audience from a product and the service offering? What are the insights that you're taking from the customer around this, and how you're plugging that back into the product offering itself?
The choice of our brand name itself was very apt.
Yes.
It shows our commitment to the topic of sustainability. But we don't just want to use the name for the sake of it, right? We are called Tree. It represents all the right things that you can talk about in terms of growth, protection, the coverage, and then, of course, the parallel of it is sustainability. Have we done enough? No. Very early days, miles to go. But we have started with some baby steps, and literal baby steps. The other day, Vikram and I were talking about this, and we have a young team. Many of them are just becoming young parents and having their first child and the second one come along. And we're like, let's build sustainability right from there, giving them Sacred Grove certificates as their welcome gift to this world, saying from the day you arrive, you are already a guardian for a piece of this earth, right? And starting from something as simple, tangible as that, right? And I think Suvo's point about doing something tangible is very pertinent. For things that will come about in 5 years or 10 years from now, it's great. It makes for great boardroom discussions. I think for real people in the team, has to be tangible. Actions that we are now taking, we are in close discussions with the Saudi government on some of these green initiatives. The government itself is very committed to the whole Saudi Green Initiative, with billions of trees to be planted over the next decade or so. How can we really be a part of this public-private partnership? getting our customers, getting our employees involved, and then designing products that answer to this, not just as a checklist exercise. Inherently doing good, being part of the green mobility phenomena, right? And it's still, again, at a very nascent stage in Saudi, but something that, again, the country is committed to. We are having these dialogues. Have we done enough? Do I have anything tangible to show now? Not yet, in all honesty. But it's a big part of our roadmap. This is how we want to build the product. For the variety of products that we will launch will all have an element of sustainability, not just climate action, but sustainability, a part of giving back in a meaningful way. When we talk about motor, yes, green ecosystems are all part of what we will be doing. When we talk about pet, we want to talk about being better pet parents and being a more responsible society. When we talk about cyber insurance, we want to, again, create sustainable educational programs about being cyber aware, being cyber safe. So a whole mindset of prevention rather than just protection and recovery, which is where insurance has been disproportionately focused. Yeah. We want to take a bigger share of prevention. And I think for a startup of our size and scale, I think it's important we become part of the big public-private initiative here, rather than try and go do things all by ourselves.
Yeah. Preeti, I have an idea for you for giving back, unless you already thought of it. For every tree insurance customer buys, you say, I'll plant a tree. Yeah, in your name.
This is exactly what we're talking to the Green Initiative about. Again, early days. Hopefully, within this year, we can bring this to life.
Buy a tree, get a tree.
Yes.
Lovely.
We've got the tagline there. Yes.
I love it.
Right? There you go. I'm doing Vikram's job now. I'm doing your job now.
Thank you.
On that note of what can you do now? All of you were a part of financial services, and also specifically 3 of you as part of leading banks. So Suvo and Vikram, what specific actions can branding or otherwise, you have to live the brand as well, right? It's not just about branding. What can boards do to effectively champion this robust sustainability agenda within their organizations? Suvo, perhaps we'll start with you.
I think I like the idea that I think Prashant mentioned of having the Virgin Media idea of having conversations with a younger group of stakeholders. I think boards typically are 50 plus, 60 plus kind of individuals. And from a timeline perspective, they're less vested in the next 30, 40, 50 years. A younger employee who's in early 20s is definitely more vested, right? I think every organization should probably form an advisory council of youngsters where they run ideas through. I think it's a brilliant idea. And maybe have a parallel boardroom discussion, maybe every quarter with this team saying, are we doing enough? What can we do differently, right? Preeti is at the advantage of having a young team. So your entire team is young and free. But most organizations have people at different cohorts of age, right? I think it's very important that you get the youngest members of the team to come in and lecture the board the way, not an activist way, but a collaborative way of what can we do differently. I think that's a very good starting point. But I think that's an idea that I wish companies picked up here. At the moment, what happens is, Vikram knows this very well, somebody in the company is responsible for sustainability, the CSO, the Chief Sustainability Officer, and then that team prepares a report that comes to the board. The report is presented, the board says, okay, and we move on. It was just one of those things that we had to do, and we did. Nobody's really vested in what's happening in this space, right? Not in the way Preeti was describing, right? Your company itself is called Tree, which is a very good starting point. I think it's important that you have a younger set of people. You can't change the boards overnight. You can't replace the boards overnight. So what you can do is supplement the board with another team of people who can probably be more passionate and are given a free hand to do this. Budgets aren't a problem. Most companies, especially in the region we are in, especially financial institutions, are blessed with super profits, right? We are seeing the numbers quarter after quarter. The profits are stupendous. So a part of that being put back into the future for climate action is nothing really. So it's really a question of intent and action coming together through some intervention by people who are more vested.
Yeah.
So that's what I would think.
That's great. The Youth Advisory Council reporting to the board periodically. Vikram, any thoughts on that?
I would echo what Suvo said, and I would just add a few more points to it. I think there's a distinction between what a board's responsibility is and what the management team's responsibility is. So the board needs to necessarily take that longer view. And there's that phrase that came in, which is intergenerational equity. I think that's something that they need to embrace in more ways than one. Some organizations, very few of them, but some have already started. So one organization I know has put nature and they've given nature as nature's got a board seat essentially. This is Patagonia.
Yep.
And they say that, look, our primary shareholder is nature, and we exist just to serve nature in various ways. And of course, it's a commercial business, so we want to make sure that the enterprise generates enough funding for nature. Yeah.
There's a lot of the Apple commercial where Mother Nature comes along, right? That reminds me of that one, right?
Yeah, but what Apple needs to be reminded is that there are more mobile phones in landfills than humans on the planet.
Correct.
And Apple has whatever 40% market share. So Apple should be asked that if they're responsible for the entire value chain of making phones and making sure that they have a responsible place in our lives, then that cost we're bearing, right? They're not bearing it.
Yeah.
May not be profitable in the way the business model is designed at the moment. So yes, they better listen to Mother Nature. The other point I want to make is that many progressive organizations, and when I say progressive, it's a bit loaded because I'm seeing small and medium-sized organizations leading the pack in this. They are including nature in the commercial value proposition. We happen to be working with a few very interesting companies. The ones that I can mention two, actually. One is the company called PR Nation. They sell art on Instagram, and they made a commitment that for every square feet of art we sell, a square feet of forest will be protected. And they've then quickly expanded to different markets, and they're doing quite well. The other one, which is my current favorite, which we just signed up 6 months back, is a jewelry firm called W Saloon. It's a high-end jewelry company. They're based in the UK and France and originally from Lebanon. So they launched a range of jewelry with us and inspired by the forest that you see in the background. And their commitment is that the more the jewelry collection sells, a percentage of the sales of that collection will go towards conservation.
Okay.
And they're getting a good feedback. So organizations are realizing that conservation is not a nice to have. It is not a CSR story. It should not be page number 147 in your
annual report.
Yeah, where somebody just takes it and gives it 1 minute in their board meeting. Yeah. Conservation will drive commercial outcomes. Conservation will drive valuation. I can't tell you how many pitch decks that we are a part of now, because a lot of the VC community that I'm familiar with, they are now insisting that organizations add conservation outcomes to their overall story. Yeah, it may be a big box at the moment, so one can argue the intention, but it is happening.
It's a start.
So it's a start, yeah. So provocation to the boards, think 20 year, 30 year, let the management team, let the CEO look at it from an ADR perspective. You look at it from an ADR perspective.
Nice. Awesome. So if you use that as a provocation, as a background, Prashant, what are the insights of this young generation, their mindsets that the organizations can tap into and utilize, and can the organization to be really invested into this whole sustainability agenda? Can it also drive ROI by having invested into programs like these?
See, to me, the ROI is clear. I think it's a question of, when I talk to business leaders like we have in this room, do they actually see it? And I think, Vikram, you made a very good point, right? It's the management sees it differently, the board sees it in a slightly different way. But the ROI is clear. See, first of all, from just a pure branding perspective, what Lumi is able to do and what we are demonstrating when we are collaborating with companies is that they are providing a clear avenue for intergenerational collaboration, not dialogue, collaboration on problem through a quest, where they come out with tangible outcomes, which the organization and the participants claim ownership to. We don't. The second thing is that this is providing a clear pathway for them to differentiate, in some cases very explicitly, well, you work with younger customers, but in other cases, saying that we are doing this for the community, like we're working with a real estate company, they're doing it for the community. It drives greater trust, brand, because beyond product to purpose. But I think the third very critical point is that unlike many PR or marketing initiatives, through Lumi, you come out with tangible outcomes. Like we partnered with EY last year on the topic of cybersecurity. We worked with their apprentices. They came out with 2 innovations, and the business leaders were considering putting money behind, millions of dollars behind those innovations, because they figured out a way to, they just solved a simple problem. They said, the problem is we are in a new world of hybrid working. We have such strong cybersecurity measures when we come to the office, or we don't come to the office most of the time. We are at home. So they figured out, they created an app called NetSentry, which allows an average employee to figure out hotspots of cyber weakness in their house. So this is the kind of tangible innovation that comes out. That's the kind of tangible involvement of employees and young people. And the benefits of that are pretty obvious as a leader to me. I think it's a question of just doing it. So that is how we are driving ROI for organizations. That is how we are helping them. But I default to one simple thing. Every executive is extremely busy. So what we are trying to do day in, day out is to try and make it easy. And that's where Vikram and I we've just formed a partnership. Vikram, I'll let you talk about it. How we can make it easy.
Yeah, so absolutely delighted. So we've launched these really exciting climate action quests, and they're designed towards young adults in the age group of 10 to 25 to look at climate change as a broader topic. And over a period of 1 week, through design thinking and AI-enabled prototyping, come up with solutions that can solve some of these problems. We have an interesting bunch of companies that are keen to sponsor it, because we clearly believe that when hundreds of and thousands of students get involved and they actually share that with their parents, who are the ones who are sitting in boards at the moment, it'll be a nice little provocation for everyone. So very excited to see it. We had a pilot run recently. We had a bunch of kids who created a really impressive idea called Eco Champs, which is about conserving water and saving plastic and gamify the experience, and quite fascinating. I love these interactions, because when you're on a Zoom call with a bunch of 16-year-olds, you see young people with lots of hope. When you're talking to CSOs, it's a different one.
Talking of provocation, one comment I can't resist making to Vikram's point about board versus the management. If there's no versus, but I'm saying looking at the board separate from the management. My view is, I think globally, I don't have the numbers to back this up, board members last less long than CEOs do. So I'm not necessarily sure whether the board members have a much longer term view than the CEO. And to expect the board thinks 8 years, the CEO thinks 8 years or 8 quarters, most likely, I think the boards are as quarter focused as the CEOs are. So I don't think we can delegate upwards on this. I think we have to drive it from the driver's seat as CEO and the team of people, the management team, the exco, whatever that is, and the youth forum that we talked about, and then push the board upwards to look at it. But I don't think boards are necessarily waiting to solve this problem for you. Especially my experience, Vikram, yours too, in the boards in this region, and they're far more focused on bottom line than anything else.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it has to be driven upward. I don't think you can expect the board to take care of this while the CEO takes care of quarterly numbers. That's my view.
And so I really believe the power of the youth forum. When you have a team that believes, again, with all the support you can get externally, involving specialists like Lumi and Sacred Groves, there still has to be a very strong internal mandate on this, where employees and your teams believe in it way more than even the board. Because that's where they will make climate action a part of the whole operating model. What products are we building? How are we operating? And how are we servicing our customers? And how are we sustainably giving back? This cannot be done through a small team that has the title of sustainability. It has to become part of the DNA of the organization, where your employees from bottom up believe in the cause, and whatever the cause might be. Not all employees are driven by the same cause. Believe in a cause, believe in multiple causes, but I don't think outsourcing is really a sustainable option. It has to be driven bottom up.
Yeah. This has been such a rich discussion that we can probably have a couple more hours of this. In the interest of time, probably, unfortunately, we'll have to bring this to a close. There's so many nuggets here for our listeners and viewers. I just want to open it up for any final quick 15-second sound bites that we can use on our TikTok channel. Just joking. That you can bring this discussion to a close, and then we will close this episode.
This is a 1.5 hour podcast so far, right?
Yeah.
1.5 hours, almost 2,000 acres of forest, primary forest would have been lost.
Whoa.
if anybody is listening to this podcast for a business case for nature, that's your answer.
Okay, that's
Wow.
strongly made.
That's great.
To end on a positive note and building on what Suvo said, I can say in the last 1.5 hours, a few hundred trees are potentially to be planted. We would have sold those many policies that give us a reason to go back and plant those many trees. Maybe not enough to cover for all the damages, but if enough organizations decide to do it, I think we can make 1.5 hours work for us.
Excellent.
I would say do it and do it now. I don't think I can wait any longer for everybody around the entire ecosystem. I think everybody has to get up, whether it's the government, whether it's the CEOs, the boards, the employees, the consumers themselves. Vote with your feet, right? In terms of companies that are still, those that are not. I think we're going to do it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Prashant?
If positive and negative, but I think if this 1.5 hours can actually give us potential collaborations which can help us scale up 10,000 young people this year and be part of this intergenerational dialogue, I think then that's my goal. That's really why we are investing all the time in having these discussions. I really hope that some of you actually work with us and some of you help us raise the profile of the importance of involving young people in these debates.
Fantastic. And that's a kind of a great note to bring this discussion to a close. You guys have been fabulous panelists. Thank you very much for being here on the FS Brew podcast.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Ranjit.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, this is Ranjit Philip. Thank you for listening to FS Brew. If you enjoyed this episode, I'll be grateful if you can subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. This will help us to reach more awesome listeners like you. Thank you.